I became beautiful when I became a feminist. Up to then, I was a pretty girl. I was not beautiful.
The face of feminism, Gloria Steinem, believes that a woman's battle wages on.
Women are trying to get out of the pink-collar ghetto into the white-collar ghetto. A blue-collar union job for a man still pays more than either one.
Steinem, known for breaking down walls, has expanded her message beyond women's liberation to address other social injustices. The activist recently turned 80, but refuses to let age slow her down or stop her from advancing the fight for equality.
They keep saying the movement is over as a way of getting rid of us.
Steinem was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, a medal she says for the entire women's movement. It's a movement she reflected on with us in her apartment in New York City.
You turned 80 this year. The New York Times had an image of you with the headline, "This is what 80 looks like." And I think that headline has pretty much followed you every decade.
It has.
For the last 3 decades. In fact, I don't know if you remember this, but on your 70th, you said, quote, "This one has the ring of mortality." So is 80 terrifying?
Yes, it is in a lot of ways. For me, 50 meant the end of the center of life, which for women has more significance since we have been wrongly valued only for childbearing. So 50 was difficult. 60 was great, because that was like entering a new free country where you didn't have all these feminine expectations. And 70 was pretty good too. But 80 is definitely about mortality, because every day I see in the newspaper sometimes people I know, who have died before 80. Now, I plan to live to 100, but even if I do, that's only 20 years. And if I think of something that happened 20 years ago, it seems like yesterday.
When I talk to women and what they think about when they think of Gloria Steinem, they think unapologetic about her views, but also glamorous and accessible. Is that how you see your legacy, as making feminism less threatening in a way?
I hope not, because I would like it to be threatening. There's a lot that deserves threatening. We come to this with whoever we are, right? I just hope that whatever it is I am is useful to the larger, huge movement that this is. But I also think people have a funny view of feminism, because they kind of secretly think if you could get a man, you wouldn't need equal pay. Do you know what I mean? So here's how I learned that. I became beautiful when I became a feminist. Up to then, I was a pretty girl. I was not beautiful. But in contrast to what people thought a feminist looked like, I suddenly became better looking. So I realized that there was something biased here. In the beginning of the life of any movement, it's very important to speak out, self-identify, be visible, be autonomous, be independent, since you've been dependent. Then the next stage is interdependence. And I think the women's movement and most of our related movements are coming into the interdependent stage, so we see the linkage. And I hope that no more will we think of women's issues as a silo over here, as if they don't affect absolutely everything.
You said before that the feminist revolution would take about 100 years. So by that estimate, we're about at the halfway mark. There are clear gains, at least here in this country. Women make up about half the workforce. Women tend to earn more college and advanced degrees. They're increasingly the breadwinners. Do you think feminists are still needed?
Let me just take what you just said. Okay, yes, there are more women on campus than there are men by a little bit right now. Why is that? It's because women are trying to get out of the pink-collar ghetto into the white-collar ghetto. A blue-collar union job for a man still pays more than either one.
What's a pink-collared ghetto? What does that mean?
A service job, a waitressing, healthcare, they're kind of all the jobs that we can't outsource because they involve personal service, and those are very, very, very disproportionately female. Also, now her situation is worse than in my day as an individual because she's more likely to graduate in big debt, and she will make $1 or $2 million less over her lifetime to pay back the debt. So, you know, I'm not trying to be discouraging. I'm just trying to say this is real life, you know, and we need, we don't even have equal pay.
Why don't you take ownership at least of some of the gains?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
I do, but if you're
when you
asking
dig
me,
deeper into the statistics, right? Women in their 20s who start out are actually, according to the Pew Research Center, making closer to like 93 cents to the dollar, which is closer than they ever have before. So there are these gains, and I think some wonder, you know, why don't women like you who worked so hard in this movement take a step back and just appreciate that for a while, dwell on the positive?
well, I think mainly we don't, because they keep saying the movement is over as a way of getting rid of us. So they're earning that in their 20s because they don't yet have children. Having children is a socially useful event. Also, we need to think not only about equal pay, we need to think about pay for the work of caregiving that is 90% done by women. And it has no economic value whatsoever. Now, you know, we need to have a tax policy that attributes a value to that work, whether it's done by men or women, at replacement level, and that's deductible if you pay taxes and refundable if you don't. Right now, a third of the work in the country, which is caregiving work, is done 90% or more by women and not rewarded at all. It's not even called a job. I mean, homemakers are still called women who don't work, excuse me. They work harder than anybody.
Have enough men adjusted to the realities of the women's movement, or has it led to men feeling displaced and confused about their role in society today?
Well, you know, I don't want to speak about men as a lump, just as I don't want to speak about women as a lump. So some men have completely understood that it's their liberation too, that the masculine role is ridiculous, just like the feminine role is ridiculous, and dehumanizing, and keeps you from expressing all your human qualities. So they are feminists for their own sake, as well as for women's sake. And they say, wait a minute, I want to see my kids. I want policies in the workplace that let everybody be parents, men as well as women. I want to have an equal relationship and a partnership, you know, with a female or a male human being, but I don't want to be lonely. I don't want to be isolated.
There was a baseball player recently, a guy named Daniel Murphy, whose wife had a baby, and he decided to take a couple days off so that he could be on paternity leave, and he faced a big backlash among other athletes. Is it at the point where men sort of need a liberation movement too?
Well, they always needed a liberation. I mean, it's racially comparable. I mean, I came back from India, you know, when I was 24 or something like that, and because I'd been living in India, I suddenly realized how segregated this country was, just visually, and I got mad on my own behalf. You know, who's telling me who my friends are and where I can live and so. And I think when men get mad on their behalf and say, you know, but I want to be there when my child is born, it's an irreplaceable moment. Actually, I was glad to see that the one sports commentator who most criticized was most condemned.
It seems that some women feel suffocated by the amount of choices they have now, what Anne-Marie Slaughter calls unresolvable tensions between family and career. Was this an unintended consequence of feminism?
No, it's an intended consequence of anti-feminism, because the point of feminism is humanity. So what that means is that men can, should, and must really become parents who spend as much time with kids as women do. And that question presupposes that that's impossible.
Does it also presuppose that we're just not there yet? That there aren't enough men that are willing to take on those responsibilities at home?
Yeah, you know, we certainly are in a state of flux, but more of us are saying, I'm not going to have children with someone who doesn't love them enough to be with them. And I'm not going to take a job that doesn't have decent parental leave for both men and women, or I'm going to organize where I am, whether I'm a man or a woman, to get that. I mean, right now, we in this country work a more obsessive work week than any country in the world. We used to be defeated by Japan. Right. Now we're worse than Japan. So we need to rebel. People deserve to have a life. You don't just, if you're earning a living, you deserve a living.
Coming up, Gloria Steinem talks about gay unions and anti-abortion legislation. More with Gloria Steinem in a minute.